Wherever you are right now, whether you are in your car, sitting in your room, or just waking up with a heart full of heavy thoughts, this prayer is for you. And all you need to do is agree in your heart. Let your soul simply whisper, "Amen," as we speak to the Lord together. We know how often our eyes stop at the surface, how naturally we notice the way someone dresses, the tone they use, the way they carry themselves, and we think we have understood them. But deep down we both know that we have not touched even the edge of their true story. Because what lies beneath is a world known only to God. And this is why the words from 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 are not just a verse to remember but a way of living. The Lord looks at the heart. And in saying this, He invites you today to surrender the way you see and to begin asking Him to let you see with His eyes. Because His gaze is unlike any other. It is steady when ours is restless. It is gentle when ours is harsh. It is full of truth when ours is clouded by misunderstanding. And as you let His Spirit open your vision, you will discover that the person you thought you understood is far more than the first impression you carried. You will begin to realize that behind every smile could be a hidden pain. Behind every sharp word could be a long history of wounds. Behind every quiet face could be a hard longing to be noticed. And in that realization, compassion will start to grow where judgment once ruled. Mercy will take the place of resentment. Tenderness will replace indifference. And the space between you and the other will be filled with the presence of the one who made both of you in His image. And I want you to imagine for a moment walking into your day and meeting people the way Jesus met them. Not looking for faults first. Not scanning for signs that they deserve your respect, but looking into their hearts with the confidence that the Father treasures them. That He knows their story from beginning to end. That He sees not only the mistakes but the moments of quiet courage. Not only the sin but the desire for holiness that flickers like a small flame. And as you do this, you will begin to feel the weight of the walls you built start to fall. Because God's love is breaking them down. And you will find yourself more ready to listen than to speak. More willing to bless than to condemn. More eager to understand than to be understood. And all of this will not come from your own strength but from the Spirit who works in you. Who whispers to you when you are tempted to turn away, "Look again, this is my child." And in that moment you will remember that you too have been looked at in this way by Him. That He saw you when you were hiding, when you were pretending to be stronger than you were, when you thought you were unworthy of love, and yet His gaze did not turn away. It rested on you with patience until you were ready to receive it. And because you have been loved like this, you can love others the same way. And this love will not always be easy. For there will be moments when someone's words will cut deep, when their actions will feel unfair, when their choices will go against what you know is good. And yet even then the Lord will remind you that seeing with His eyes means choosing to value the person more than the moment. To remember that no one is defined by a single act. To hold on to hope that His grace is still working in them as it works in you. And when you pray like this, "Lord, help me see them as you see them," you are not asking for a small change. You are asking for a transformation of the way you live. Because the way you see will shape the way you treat. And the way you treat will shape the way love flows through you into the world. And I want you to picture the faces you will meet today. The ones you know well and the ones you will pass only once. And I want you to decide now that each one will be a chance to practice looking with His eyes. to pause before assuming, to pray before reacting, to bless before speaking. And as you do this, you will find that your heart grows lighter, because judgment is heavy but mercy is light. And the more you choose mercy, the more your heart will beat in rhythm with His. And in this rhythm you will know peace. Because you are not carrying the burden of deciding who is worthy and who is not. You are simply carrying His love and letting Him decide. And that is freedom. The freedom to love without fear, to care without calculation, to give without expecting return. And this is the freedom He longs to give you today. So come, let us stand together in His presence now. Let us give Him our eyes, our hearts, our way of seeing, and let us say with all sincerity, Lord, I surrender my vision to You. Cleanse it from pride, cleanse it from suspicion, fill it with light, fill it with truth, fill it with the compassion of Your Son, so that when I look at anyone today, I will see Your image in them and treat them as one for whom You gave Your life. And as you carry this prayer in your heart, you will start to notice that the world itself feels different, because when you see with His eyes, you are no longer threatened by the differences that once made you uncomfortable. You begin to appreciate the diversity of personalities, the variety of experiences, the countless ways God's creativity is expressed in the people around you. And instead of competing, comparing, or feeling diminished, you find joy in the unique ways each person reflects a part of His image that you cannot reflect on your own. And this changes the way you speak to others, because your words will be less about proving a point and more about building a bridge. Less about defending yourself and more about affirming the dignity of the one in front of you. And you will realize that even in moments of disagreement, you do not need to destroy the person to address the problem. For seeing with His eyes means you can hold truth and love together without sacrificing either. And it will shape the way you respond to interruptions, to inconveniences, to unexpected encounters, because you will begin to suspect that each one is not a distraction from your day but an invitation from God to see Him in the one who stands before you. And as you train your heart in this way, you will also start to notice your own reactions sooner. The little flickers of pride, the subtle tightening of your spirit, the quiet assumptions that slip in unnoticed. And in those moments you can pause and breathe His name, whispering, Jesus, correct my vision, let me see what You see, and He will answer. Sometimes by reminding you of the times He has forgiven you, sometimes by showing you the wounds that make this person act the way they do, sometimes by simply flooding your heart with the awareness that you are both standing on the same ground of grace. And when you see that, your posture changes, your tone softens, your willingness to bless increases, and people will feel it, even if they cannot explain it. They will sense that you are looking at them differently, that you are listening with a patience that is rare, that you are noticing not only what they say but what they mean. And this will open doors that have been closed for years. It will allow conversations to happen that would never have been possible if you had stayed behind the walls of quick judgment. And through these moments you will understand why God cares so much about the heart. Because the heart is where His kingdom takes root. And when you treat someone as if their heart matters, you are joining Him in His work of redemption. And this is not something you can fake. Because seeing with His eyes requires being close to His heart, and that means you must spend time in His presence, letting His love heal your own wounds, letting His truth dismantle your own lies, letting His mercy soften the hard edges of your soul, And as this happens, you will find that the very way you walk into a room changes. You will no longer scan for who is worth your time. You will walk as one who knows that every person you meet is worth the blood he shed. And this awareness will slow you down in the best way. It will keep you from rushing past someone's pain. It will remind you that the small acts of seeing and acknowledging can be holy. That a moment of eye contact, a genuine smile, a quiet listening ear can be as sacred as a sermon. And as you practice this day after day, you will begin to discover that you are not only seeing others with His eyes, but also seeing yourself with His eyes. Because you cannot truly give to others what you have not received. And the more you accept His gaze on you, the more natural it will be to extend it to others. And you will begin to live less in fear of what people think and more in freedom of what God knows. For His knowledge of you is not meant to shame you, but to set you free. And this freedom will make you bold in kindness, generous in patience, rich in forgiveness, and steady in love. And so today I invite you to hold this prayer close, to repeat it often. Lord, help me see others with your eyes, not as a task to check off, but as a way to breathe, as a rhythm to carry you through the hours. Because every time you pray it, you are opening the door for Him to change not only how you see, but who you are. And this transformation will ripple outward into every conversation, every choice, every relationship, until the people around you begin to wonder what has changed. And you can simply tell them the truth, that you asked God to let you see them the way He does. And He answered, and that answer has become the greatest gift you could give and the greatest joy you could receive. When the hours of the day begin to unfold in life places different people in your path, the prayer to see with God's eyes becomes more than just a quiet moment you had earlier. It becomes a way of breathing, a way of choosing how to respond. And sometimes this choice will be tested in unexpected ways. For there will be moments when someone's words cut across your peace, or when an expression on a stranger's face awakens suspicion in your mind. And without God's help, those moments can easily pull you back into habits of quick judgment or silent withdrawal. Yet if you remember the gaze of Christ, the one that never turned away from those in need, you will begin to notice an inner space opening before you, a space where you can pause long enough to invite Him into the very second you are tempted to react. And in that pause, something holy can happen, because grace has a way of breaking through when we give it room. And you may find yourself softening towards someone you had already labeled in your mind. You may hear a whisper in your spirit reminding you that this person is carrying burdens you cannot see, that their story is longer than the single moment you share with them. And the Holy Spirit will nudge you to listen differently, to speak with gentleness, to look past the surface. And it is in these everyday encounters, at the grocery store, on the bus, at work, in your own home, that the prayer you offered to God becomes living and active, shaping your eyes and your heart at the same time. And this way of seeing is not blind to wrong or silent about truth. It simply refuses to strip a person's dignity away in the process. Because Christ never did. He saw the tax collector, but also saw the disciple he could become. He saw the outcast, but also saw the beloved child. He saw the sinner, but also saw the saint in the making. And when you allow Him to lend you His eyes, you will start to see those possibilities too, even when they are buried deep, even when no one else seems to believe in them. And perhaps today He will place someone before you who has been overlooked or misunderstood. And you will know in that instant that this is your invitation to see as he sees. To offer the kind of recognition that awakens hope. To let your words or even your silent presence become a reminder that they are not invisible. And when you live like this, you are not just being kind, you are becoming a witness of the kingdom. A living sign that God's love does not measure by the world's standards but by the value of a heart redeemed by grace. And as this prayer becomes the lens through which you meet each person, you may start to realize how much it changes you inside, because in the past it was easy to walk through a crowd and notice only what annoyed or impressed you. But now you find yourself wondering what God might be doing in the life of the one sitting quietly in the corner. You start to sense that the person who speaks too loudly might be trying to hide loneliness. That the one who avoids your eyes might be carrying shame too heavy to name. And instead of turning away, you begin to lean in with a willingness to listen, even if no words are spoken. Because the gaze of Christ is not always about fixing someone in that moment. It is about affirming that they are seen and valued, and sometimes that truth alone can be the seed of transformation. And in your own heart you will notice that impatience loses its grip. That irritation fades more quickly, because love and irritation cannot grow in the same soil when God is watering it with grace. And this way of seeing will reach beyond the easy moments to the hard ones, those times when you must face someone who has wronged you, or someone whose choices you cannot support, and still God will call you to see the person before the offense, the heart before the behavior, the image of God before the label. And this is where the cross becomes real in your vision, because it will cost you something to look at someone through mercy when your flesh wants to look through resentment. But in that cost there is blessing, for you are sharing in the way Christ loved you when you were far from him. And as you practice this, you will start to carry an awareness that every encounter is sacred ground. Not because every person will welcome you warmly or agree with you, but because every person is made by the same Creator who made you. And when that truth lives in you, it changes your tone, your timing, your body language. It teaches you to speak less and listen more, to ask questions instead of assuming answers, to leave space for the Holy Spirit to move where your own words would only close the door. And in doing this, you are not only honoring them, you are honoring God himself, because to love his children is to love him, and each time you choose to see with his eyes, you are saying to him without words, "Lord, I trust your vision more than mine. I choose your mercy over my memory. I choose your truth over my fears." And in that choice you are becoming a vessel of his peace in a world desperate for it. There is a power in remembering how Jesus looked at people, because his gaze was never accidental, never shallow, never distracted. And when you picture him walking the dusty roads of Galilee, meeting fishermen by the shore, pausing for lepers on the roadside, looking into the eyes of the woman who touched the hem of his cloak, you begin to realize that every glance carried the weight of eternity. And this is the gaze he offers to place in your heart today. The ability to truly notice someone without rushing past them, to see the worth they carry even when it is hidden under layers of failure or fear. And perhaps one of the greatest changes that happens when you begin to see with his eyes is that you no longer measure people by their usefulness to you, but by the fact that they are already precious to him, and that truth frees you from treating love like a transaction. It teaches you to give attention without expecting recognition, to extend kindness without keeping score, to listen without planning what you will say next. And as you live this way, you start to sense that you are walking slower inside, even if your day is busy, because your spirit is no longer in a race to move on to the next thing. It has learned to stay where grace is moving, and grace often moves in the quiet moments that others overlook, in the way a tired cashier forces a smile, in the way a friend hesitates before sharing something vulnerable, in the way a child's eyes light up when you really listen. And the Holy Spirit will train you to catch these moments and treat them as holy ground, for they are just as much a part of God's work as the grand miracles we read in Scripture. And when you see with His eyes, you start to celebrate the small victories in others, the hesitant step toward reconciliation, the tiny act of honesty, the choice to keep going when quitting would be easier. And in celebrating these, you are watering seeds God Himself has planted, seeds that may grow into testimonies far greater than you could imagine. And this way of living will also reveal things in your own heart. It will show you the places where your vision has been clouded by pride or pain. And in those moments, the prayer turns inward. Lord, help me see myself with the same mercy you give to others. Because if you cannot receive that mercy for yourself, you will struggle to offer it fully. And when you let His gaze rest on you, not in condemnation but in restoration, you find the courage to lay down your defenses, to admit your need, and in doing so you create more room in your heart to see and serve those around you. And so this journey of seeing with His eyes is not only about the people you meet. It is about becoming the kind of person who naturally reflects His vision to the world. Someone whose presence makes others feel safe enough to be real, because they know they will not be reduced to their worst moments in your sight. And this is how His kingdom comes quietly, through the daily choice to love with your eyes open, to let every look be a reminder that God sees and values each life, and to live so fully in that truth that people begin to sense the gaze of Christ upon them simply because they met you. There are places in the human heart that quietly distort the way we see others, places where past wounds, betrayals, and disappointments have left their mark, shaping our vision without us even noticing. And unless God heals these places, our eyes will always be tempted to filter people through the pain we have known. But the Lord is gentle enough to touch even the most guarded parts of you. And if you let Him, He will begin to wash the lens of your heart with His mercy, cleansing the fog left by bitterness, softening the hardness formed by years of self-protection. And in this process you will find that seeing with His eyes is not only about how you look at others, but also about how you let Him look at you. Because when you truly believe that you are seen by Him without rejection, you gain the freedom to see others without suspicion. And so today the prayer becomes, Lord, take every shadow in me that clouds my sight, every unhealed wound that makes me quick to judge, every scar that tempts me to close my heart, and let your light reach it. And as you speak this, you may notice how often your reactions to people have more to do with your own history than with their intentions. How a certain tone of voice stirs an old memory, how a specific kind of mistake triggers a deeper fear. And this awareness is not meant to shame you, but to invite you into healing. For when God's love touches these tender places, the need to defend yourself begins to fade. The urgency to label and categorize people loses its grip, and you start to find room in your heart for stories that are not like yours, for journeys you do not fully understand. And in this openness, compassion has a place to grow. And as it grows, it changes the way you speak. Because words born from a healed heart carry a different weight. They are steady without being sharp, honest without being cruel, and they invite trust rather than resistance. And even your silence will speak differently, for the peace within you will be felt by those around you. And this is how Christ's presence becomes visible through your life, not in dramatic displays, but in the quiet way you meet someone's eyes and let them know they are safe there. That they will not be measured against a standard they could never reach. That they are more than the sum of their mistakes. And perhaps someone you meet today has been longing for exactly that kind of gaze. One that does not flinch when it sees their flaws. One that holds steady when the world turns away. And you have the chance to be that gaze because you have received it yourself from the Lord. And the more you receive it, the more it will flow out of you without forcing. Until one day you realize that you no longer need to try to see people with His eyes. You simply do. Because His healing has become the way you see. And as you walk through the healing God gives, you will begin to see how this renewed vision transforms not only your relationships but also the atmosphere you carry into every place you step. Because a heart at peace radiates something words cannot fully describe. It changes the tone of a conversation. It softens tension before it grows. It invites honesty where there was once guardedness. And in this way your very presence becomes a ministry, a quiet but powerful testimony that Christ's love can redeem not just a soul but the way that soul sees the world. And there will be days when this is tested, when old wounds try to speak louder than God's truth, when someone's actions seem to echo the very pain you thought was already healed. And in those moments you will need to return quickly to the source. To close your eyes for a breath and say, "Lord, remind me how you see them. Remind me how you see me," and He will. Often with such tenderness that it disarms your anger and replaces it with sorrow for the brokenness you see. And in that sorrow you will find compassion rising again, not because you condone what was wrong, but because you understand that hurt people often hurt people, and only the gaze of Christ can break that cycle. And sometimes He will show you a glimpse of the burdens they are carrying, enough for you to pray for them rather than resent them. And in doing this you will discover that prayer is one of the most profound ways to see with His eyes. For when you bring someone before God in prayer, you are looking at them through His mercy, naming them before His throne, and trusting Him to do what you cannot. And this posture keeps your heart from growing cold. It keeps you from withdrawing into bitterness, because instead of replaying their faults, you are placing them into His hands. And the more you live this way, the more natural it will become. Until seeing with His eyes is not an effort but a habit shaped by His Spirit. And one day you may be surprised to realize that the people who used to frustrate you most are now the ones you pray for most fervently. And through those prayers your own heart has grown wider, stronger, and more tender all at once. For this is the paradox of grace. It makes you soft without making you weak. And it gives you strength without making you hard. And when you carry this into every interaction, you are carrying Christ Himself. Because His gaze is not just something you imitate, it is something that lives in you, changes you, and works through you to touch the hearts of others. And in this way the healing He began in you becomes healing for the world around you. There comes a point in the journey of learning to see with God's eyes when the prayer you began with in the quiet of the morning becomes the posture of your whole life. When it no longer feels like something you have to remember to do, but something you cannot help doing because His vision has shaped your heart so deeply. And at this point you start to realize that every day is filled with divine appointments. That no meeting is random. No face is without meaning, because in each one God is inviting you to be a reflection of His gaze. And you begin to live with the awareness that your eyes can either be a window for His love or a mirror of the world's indifference. And you choose again and again to be the window, to let His light pass through you without distortion, to let people see in your eyes a welcome they may not have found anywhere else. And as this happens, you notice that the smallest encounters carry eternal weight. A brief smile to the weary neighbor, a moment of listening to someone whose story feels messy, a simple blessing spoken over a child. All of these are seeds sown with the eyes of Christ. Seeds that you may never see bloom, but that He will water in His perfect time. And living this way also changes how you end your days, because you no longer measure them by how much you achieved or how many tasks you completed, but by how faithfully you allowed Him to love others through you. And some nights you will look back and see moments you missed, times you turned away too quickly or spoke without grace, and instead of drowning in guilt, you will bring those moments to Him, asking Him to redeem them, trusting that He can reach the hearts you could not, and in that trust your peace returns, because you remember that this whole journey is not about perfection but about surrender, about staying close enough to His heart that His sight becomes your sight. And so as we come to the end of this prayer, I want you to hold in your mind the faces you will see in the hours ahead. Some familiar, some new, and I invite you to say to the Lord right now, "Here are my eyes, my words, my steps, my heart. Use them to reflect your love. Use them to notice the ones the world forgets. Use them to speak hope into places where hope has died." And as you say this, let Him remind you that He goes with you, that you are not being sent to see with His eyes from a distance, but with His presence in you, guiding, strengthening, and sustaining. And let that truth steady you, because you will not get it right every time, but every time you return to Him, He will renew you. Every time you choose His vision over your own, He will expand your capacity to love, until one day you find that seeing with His eyes has not only changed how you see the world, it has changed who you are in it. And in that transformation, His glory is revealed, and His kingdom comes a little closer through you. And as you walk into the hours ahead, carrying this prayer like a lamp before you, there will be moments when the temptation to see with your old vision will return. Moments when fatigue or frustration will make it easier to close your heart than to keep it open. But these are the very moments when grace can do its greatest work. Because when you choose to pause and invite God's perspective, even in the smallest interaction, you are breaking the cycle of the world's hardness. You are planting a seed of heaven in the soil of earth. And every seed matters to Him, for He is the Lord who notices the widow's 2 small coins, the shepherd who leaves the 99 for the one, the Father who runs toward the prodigal while he is still far off. And this same heart beats in you when you choose to see as He sees. So even if no one else notices the patience you extend, the kindness you offer, the silent prayers you whisper for the stranger on the street, your Father in heaven sees, and His smile rests upon you. And there will be days when you feel weak, when you wonder if it matters, when you question if anyone is being changed. But in those moments, remember that love sown with His eyes never returns empty. It goes ahead of you. It reaches further than you will ever know. And one day in eternity, you will see the faces of those who were touched by a look, a word, a prayer you offered in faith, and they will tell you how God used it to call them closer to Him. And in that moment you will understand that nothing was wasted. Not a glance, not a tear, not a single act of mercy. And until that day comes, you live by trust, by the quiet conviction that seeing with His eyes is not just an act of obedience but an act of worship. Because every time you honor the image of God in another person, you are honoring Him. And this is the life you were made for, not a life of self-protection and suspicion, but a life poured out in love, a life that reflects the gaze of Christ into the dark corners of the world. And as you carry this calling forward, let your prayer rise one last time today. Lord, thank you for giving me your eyes to see, your heart to love, your spirit to guide me. Help me to walk into every moment remembering that each soul I meet belongs to you. And with that prayer on your lips and in your heart, you step forward not in your own strength but in His, ready to love, ready to serve, ready to see, until the day your earthly sight fades and you look fully into the eyes of the one who taught you how to see all along. Thank you for taking the time to pause today and join me in speaking with the Lord. May this prayer become a small lamp guiding your steps throughout the day, so that whenever you meet anyone, you can offer them the loving gaze of Christ. If you wish for us to continue walking together each morning, learning how to live and love as He loves, please subscribe so you won't miss our next moments together. Until tomorrow, I pray that the Lord will touch your eyes with His gentleness, keep your heart in His peace, and let every step you take carry the warmth of His kingdom.